All right, folks, I'm Brett Kinsella. We are here with Gain, the Generative AI News Weekly Rundown. We do this every week on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. I have my trusty colleague, Eric Schwartz, with me here as usual. Hey, Eric, how are you? Eric, you are on. How about yourself? Yeah, there you go. All right, so it's first time on the stream, apparently, Eric. Good job. And Jeremiah Aoyang, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Really excited about what we have today. As per usual, everything is blown up. We had a really tightly set run of show for today and all the topics we're going to cover, and then all sorts of new things happen. So we're going to cover a lot of things. First, we're going to do a little bit of tribute to Star Wars and something that came out of the generative AI world this week. We're going to talk about big fundraising. We're going to talk about Bing. We're going to talk about ChatGPT plugins. I have alpha access to that, so I just have been playing with that a lot. I can tell you a lot about how that works. We're going to talk about what some big companies are doing in the space, PwC, talk about TikTok. We're going to talk about deepfakes, all the stuff, right? And every week it's all this stuff. But let's start out, because today we should say, May the 4th be with you.
In a galaxy far, far away, prepare for a reboot like never before. This summer, Wes Anderson brings you a side of the Star Wars universe you've never seen before, the Galactic Menagerie. Join this ragtag crew of unlikely heroes as they navigate the absurdity of the cosmos, challenge the Empire, and redefine what it means to be a rebel.
Our mission is simple. We steal the Emperor's artifact, save the galaxy, and maybe find ourselves along the way.
For this mission, we'll need lightsaber, blaster, thermal detonator, paper airplanes, spare parts, and R2-D2.
With a star-studded ensemble featuring the galaxy's most eccentric cast, the Galactic Menagerie is the most delightfully offbeat Star Wars adventure yet. Starring Timothée Chalamet, Scarlett Johansson, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, William Dafoe, Adrian Brody, and Owen Wilson.
Wow.
Coming to theaters this summer, may the Force be with you.
All right, folks.
Wow.
That is super fun. I love what people are doing with synthetic media. There's all sorts of rules trying to keep people from using synthetic media for IP licensing and all these things. But I love it when we have something like this. I think that was mostly made with Midjourney. Actually, Midjourney 5.1 is out too already. We're not even going to talk about that today. But Jeremiah, what'd you think of that?
That was awesome. I knew it was like a Wes Anderson feel right away. And I love the Owen Wilson reference. It was really well done. I mean, and I'm sure Star Wars is cool with that because they love fan films. So there's probably very few concerns there. But let's see what Wes Anderson has to say.
Yep.
What do you think, Eric? You've watched a few Star Wars pieces.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely Disney never has been litigious, so that's totally fine.
Yeah,
no, it's honestly very impressive. It's one of those things where it's not in the uncanny valley, even though it's clear it's not a quote unquote official Star Wars thing. But I just, the fact that probably took what a couple years ago would have taken months to probably happen in a day is itself kind of amazing.
Absolutely. Okay, so what we should do is, Jeremiah, maybe we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, and we can talk about an event you just ran too. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. My name's Jeremiah. I love new technologies. When they happen, I love to get in front of it and build a community and then talk about it and analyze it. I have a background as an industry analyst, like from Forrester. I've started some research firms. I've started a large council for corporations on different topics and done a lot of professional speaking around the world. So yeah, last week I hosted the Llama Lounge in San Francisco, and we had over 10 AI startups. I live in the Bay Area, so right in the epicenter of AI. And we had 10 startups present. 150 people showed up. 170 were on the wait list. We just couldn't fit them all in. And I'm hosting another one next month, and people are just signing up. There's like so many events on AI happening, maybe 3 per day, including on the weekends here in San Francisco. It is just AI central.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. I'm really happy to have you here. Jeremiah and I have known each other for a few years now. And it's just great that we keep coming across each other because we both work in new technologies exclusively.
Exactly.
And what's going on with generative AI just seems bigger than anything I've seen since the late 90s.
Definitely.
So That was a great introduction. Hey, folks, if you're in the comments, particularly, like I know there's a bunch of people on LinkedIn, just let us know you're here in the comments. If you have questions or comments about anything we're showing, we'll bring it into the conversation as well. So definitely do that. Okay, so we have a lot of news today, and I'm going to do sort of a callback to something that seems like a long time ago, but it was just a few days ago. And what we want to talk about is Deep Floyd. So, Eric, you wrote about Deep Floyd. What's the story?
Yes. So Deep Floyd comes from our friends over at Stability AI, best known, of course, for Stable Diffusion. And they've been keeping pretty busy recently with a lot of new products, including this great new text-to-image generator that they've put together as an open source project that really does largely what Stable Diffusion does, but with a different approach and focus on photorealism, on getting words, every word except for synthetia, right? It's really an impressive combination of software and data. But it just sort of shows like it shows how many variations on a theme there can be, even within just the concept of text to image generator, and how these kinds of either specializations or different focuses are going to become more common as the broad idea of a text image generator being useful for business and personal activities is going to be more accepted. It's already pretty accepted, I think.
Yeah, and I spent a good amount of time playing with this. A lot of you guys know, you might know me from Synthetia or you know me from voicebot.ai. So I was playing with some different things. This was okay. I mean, when I entered this text, first of all, I should say it's much better than anything we've seen recently. So that's the first thing I should say. Is it perfect yet? No, but the voice bot should be lowercase. You can see the voice bot was here. It looks kind of like a question mark. It was supposed to be an exclamation point, things like that. So the letters look like letters, which is a significant breakthrough versus what we've seen in the past. The other thing that I noticed, well, first of all, there's if you go to Synthetia and just go to synthetia.substack.com, you can find the story on this. We have links to where you can play this. There's a demonstration version on Hugging Face. You can go in, you can do negative prompts. There's a lot of really cool things you can do in there. It's pretty bare bones, but that's what you want. One of the things I did notice, though, is when I was using the term like Synthetia, which is a portmanteau, it doesn't exist in the real world, it was having a lot of trouble with it. So Deep Floyd, it did fine. It knows itself, which is great. I wonder if it's trained on not just letters, but whole words. And so it actually, I think, was doing a little bit better on words that it had seen before. But I think that's really, really interesting. What are your thoughts, Jeremiah? You're on mute, Jeremiah.
I didn't get a chance to really look at it too carefully, so I don't have a lot of comments on this on Deep Floyd.
All right. I would say one of the things that does stand out about it, though, is it's not just creating text to image, but also image to image in terms of redoing an existing image in different styles, and they have some pretty cool examples on the GitHub, and I put it in the VoiceBot story as well. How you can make a photo look like Legos or puppets or any other sort of image, which is a thing that is starting to become popular, but has so far as I know mostly been available as an enterprise aspect, not a consumer level engine. So it's kind of exciting to see that.
Yeah, and by the way, too, the photorealism is really excellent. I mean, we saw with the XL model from Stability AI a couple of weeks ago that really was an upgrade. I think my prompt here was a VW van at the beach or at the ocean, with Synthetia written on the side, and this is what came out, which I think is pretty sharp. They also have some things in here in terms of their performance benchmarks, which are interesting. But there was another announcement. They actually teased a ChatGPT style bot coming from Stability AI. A lot of you will know that Stable LM came out a couple of weeks ago, and that is their large language model. We saw Hugging Chat come out recently, which is an alternative to ChatGPT, and now Stability AI is going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, it seems like there's a couple of tool sets here that are commodities, right? Text-based LLMs, image generators, with diffusion capabilities. Seem like it's going to be a standard offering.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's our next story today? We have so many. Let's move to a new tab. Okay. Hello, Cohere. If you don't know Cohere, Canadian-based large language model player, one of the sort of big names in the space, apparently raised $250 million on a $2 billion valuation. Now, there's a couple of points in here that might be interesting. First is Cade Metz from New York Times said this had happened. A couple of people afterwards said this is in process. I think it's probably happened. Cade usually has good information. And so it just might be different people reporting it in different ways. Just a couple months ago, Bloomberg reported that Cohere might actually get a $6 billion valuation. Now, again, that could be just people priming the market, but this is $2 billion, quite a bit less. My calculation, this is something like 7% of the total valuation of OpenAI right now. And why might that be? Well, one of the reasons it might be is that Cohere said they're just going to do large language model, just text-to-text generation, whereas OpenAI is a much larger, obviously they have a product lead, they have a market share lead, but they also are doing images, they're doing video, they're doing other things as well. And this actually comes up when we start thinking about multimodal. Sure, there's a lot of applications for Cohere with just text, or AI21, which is just doing text. But the market gets a lot larger when you can actually integrate multimodal. You have new products, but then you can also integrate the products, integrate the experiences.
Let me know what questions you have for Cohere. In fact, I'm moderating a panel tomorrow at TiCon on enterprise AI, and they will be on my panel.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. Well, so
Yeah.
I have a question. How much do they raise, and how are they spending the money? Now, I do have.
Okay.
There's a rumor that they're spending $12 million a month on training and inference.
Ooh. Well, I mean, OpenAI spent what, $500 million to train the foundational model, so that seems on par.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they were in OpenAI at the time they were doing other things as well, like DALL-E and Codex and things like that. But for a company that's a startup that I think had previously raised 170 million, you can imagine if you do 250 million, just your training cost, you only have 24 months of runway. That doesn't include personnel and all these other things. So basically, they're taking in about 12 months of cash in order to run the business.
Yeah, so you might see them as they start to dwindle on that. If they can't raise more, then they'll get close to somebody like Google or Amazon and broker a deal, just like we saw OpenAI do that. Who's burning, by the way, $700K a day on cloud computing, I heard.
Who's burning that much?
OpenAI, $700K on computational services. But that's why, but it's not real, because the Microsoft is obviously going to pay for some of those that with Azure.
Yeah, all the money the $10 billion they took from Microsoft is paying Microsoft Azure for the compute, training, and inference costs. Yeah,
and Cohere has had a relationship with Google. They worked with Google Cloud as Google Cloud was going to be where they did their training and hosting the NLP when they were developing it. I think back in like 2021. Even I don't know if that's still that close relationship, but as far as I know, they're a Google affiliated rather than Microsoft or anyone else.
Good. Oh, that's interesting. You can see where that could go if Google can't keep up.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because we see like Google, for example, taking a position in the latest funding round for Anthropic. And what we're looking at right now is, I think we've got OpenAI and who's going to be the key alternative, or who are going to be the two key alternatives, or who are going to be the alternatives in certain niches. And you've got Cohere, you've got Anthropic, you've got NVIDIA, you have AI21. So there's a bunch of players out there that have very functional systems that have improved over time. And, can they compete? Are they going to differentiate? Can they compete on cost? If you think about what ChatGPT Turbo is, it's like the cheapest text generation solution out there right now. And I noticed that Jürgen just put in the chat that he's hoping that Cohere will add tighter privacy and data protection, similar to what OpenAI is doing. And I think this is one of the ways that people are going to have to start competing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's even before mentioning some of the open source projects that are going on, like what Stability is doing.
Okay, so another big dollar number that we have in the large language model space, and let's see. So let's move on to enterprise. This is something obviously Jeremiah knows a lot about, and we have so news from Samsung. They banned ChatGPT.
I saw that.
And
can I talk about that? I mean,
yeah. Anomaly or trend?
Oh, trend. I mean, but also because somebody stepped in it. They uploaded some proprietary code of a product and they're into GPT, and and it resurfaced again. It regurgitated, some private information. So I think the bigger trend, we're going to talk about this at my panel tomorrow on enterprise AI, is private clouds or on-prem versions or enterprise class AI, and they're looking for privacy, security, and also accuracy. So the levels are going to step up now. So I think that'll be a big topic for tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always the tension between more data means more accuracy or better performance, but then you have more concern about privacy and so on. But I think I think there's going to be a lot of semi-frantic efforts to clamp down on any of these large language models using proprietary data that they're not supposed to have for training. But I think it'll be fairly straightforward. I think it's just going to be a lot of very rapid movements in that direction.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the opposite position for you, Jeremiah. I think this is an anomaly. It kind of looks like a trend because we saw Bank of America do this. We saw JP Morgan Chase do this a couple months ago. But interestingly enough, since February, we haven't seen a lot of this, Samsung being the one of the notable exceptions. What we do see is there's actually some data that shows that over 50% of all HR departments are building policies around this, but those policies aren't necessarily bans. They're about like use. And my hypothesis could be proven wrong because it could be everyone just locks this down shortly. My hypothesis is that this is very similar to what we saw with social media about 10, 15 years ago, where everyone started banning it. And then they were trying to figure out like what the problems were. And even more recently, we see this again with like the rise of TikTok. People are starting to stop this. But then over time, it just becomes a business tool. And Samsung said, oh, okay, it's no problem. We're going to be able to have these tools available to our employees because we're building our own and they'll be able to use those. I just don't believe that's, not to pick on Samsung, although they're sort of easy because we see what happened with Tizen and some of these other things that are capable, but they never got broad usage. They don't keep up with the other technologies. I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up. And I don't think they're going to be able to build the type of tools that are going to help them get productivity. And that's the issue. We've had less than 1% productivity gain over the last 20 years. Before that, we were averaging almost 3%. And we have these new tools here that are going to drive productivity in the era of scarcity when we have layoffs and budget constraints. I just think people are going to be clamoring to use these tools in order to do more with less, which is what all the corporate financial executives are demanding.
Definitely.
All right.
I mean, the bans don't really work when it comes to these kinds of things. I mean, that's why the rules are better. If you say don't upload proprietary data, but you can use it for other projects. That's
the other thing too is the announcement about 2 weeks ago we talked about with ChatGPT Business. That's going to provide some of these tools for people that will like basically you'll be able to enforce, I think, company-wide policy around what you upload. It's going to take them longer than they think. I don't know that they haven't built enterprise software before like this.
Right.
It's a tool in the back end. So there's a lot.
Different set of requirements. So the European corporations are going to want data in that particular country. So OpenAI is not going to be able to provide that unless they use Azure's private cloud services, which Microsoft is touting. We could talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be a way. Well, let's talk about another big piece of news. This was actually over a week ago now, but we didn't get to it last week. So PricewaterhouseCoopers is planning to spend $1 billion in generative AI. And what they're using it for is a lot of these internal capabilities. They want to bring it to their clients, and that would be like one of the obvious things that they're going to do. But actually, when we talk about the investment, a lot of it is for internal operational efficiency, back office, project management, deliverable development, coding, and software development. Eric, you wrote about this. Why don't you give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an eye-catching number, $1 billion, but it's not as though they're writing a check for $1 billion made out to generative AI or something. It's a much bigger project involving internal development and partnerships, specifically with, as we said, Microsoft, with Azure, with bringing in the tools and software developed by OpenAI. And I think, as they say, they see it as an efficiency tool, as they say, a way to boost productivity by summarizing all those meetings by writing up all the social media posts or marketing concepts, and then notably, it's that they see it as a stepping stone toward PricewaterhouseCoopers being a source of information, of advice for their clients about how to engage with generative AI and how to think about it from a business perspective. But they are, it's definitely a Microsoft-centered approach, because not only are they working with Azure, but they're also, and when OpenAI approaches well, because they're also working with Harvey, which is a startup that OpenAI is invested in, that employs generative AI tools for legal services. So like legal
contract writing and things like that. Yeah.
So I mean, they're definitely they're definitely thinking comprehensively about how to make generative AI part of their business, and I think that's probably going to be an approach that other big companies imitate.
Yeah, and also PwC is also probably reacting to how Bloomberg GPT with open source technology launched, I don't know, about a month ago. Yes. So the financial services realized two things. One, you don't want to fall behind the trend. Two, they got to cut costs where they need to. Three, they're sitting on a treasure trove of gold, which is their proprietary data, and they can serve that up and resell it in a conversational chat style with natural language processing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Jeremiah, I want to talk. I don't have the graphic on this, but that's okay, because the way Pew does it is they put too many graphics on one page anyway. One of the things they talked about was a survey, and you brought this to my attention, around interviews with Americans and what they thought about AI and how that's going to impact their future.
Yeah. So I took one of the tweets. Okay, so the high level takeaway from that is, I mean, you and I have been through a number of tech trends, Brett. In this finding, I think it was like over 80% of Americans, I'm summarizing here, believe that AI is consequential. They didn't use that exact term, but that's the term I use, meaning it has extreme upsides, extreme downsides. It's going to impact lives. We already know that there's companies that are laying people off, such as Meta, Dropbox, and I can't remember who else. Oh, IBM. Just this week, in order to focus on AI. That's called consequential. So if the tech companies are doing it, means finance, retail, and every other industry will do that too. The interesting thing I think about that study was, I think I'll actually pull up the ones is that most people thought that other people's jobs would get impacted. But they were less, I think if I recall, that they didn't think that they would be individually impacted. And I've seen that trend before. When I'm at conferences, I say, raise your hand if you think somebody around you is going to lose a job from AI, and everybody raises their hand. I say, what about your own job? And there's fewer hands. But I do have the data in front of me right now. Here's the link if you want to show it. I only clipped the one slides. But essentially, workers generally will have a major impact by AI. Them personally, only 28% thought they would be personally impacted. It's really funny how people have this bias that it's not going to impact them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pulling up your tweet right now. Let me just get back to this.
Here's the headline. About 6 in 10 Americans believe AI will have a major impact on workers generally, but only 28% of them, oh, there's a typo from Pew, believe it will have a major effect on them personally.
They use ChatGPT to write it. That's why.
Oh no, it is okay. No, it's just blurred. It does say believe, correct?
It does say believe. It almost looks like two L's, but yes, that's all right. And I don't think ChatGPT does a lot of typos. I can't really think of any that they have done. But I think you're absolutely right. It's people don't understand how it's going to impact them, and we all know the studies. 80% of drivers believe they're above average in driving, and obviously that can't be true. But I think the thing I take away from this is that it's really, I think, your key conclusion, which is people already recognize that AI is a big deal and it's impacting our daily life.
Absolutely. I don't hear anybody. I hear people lamenting already, versus with like other tech movements like social audio and Web3 and the sharing economy. People in Web2, they're like, nah, nobody wants to do that. It's different now. This is a very different movement.
Well, I mean, there have been companies already citing it as a reason for laying off people. It's obviously impacted several companies' stock prices in significant ways. Like, there's whether or not it's a a response that makes sense to the technology. The fact that technology exists is definitely causing things. Whether or not it's warranted is a different question.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. I think that's I want to track that data over time, but we've got so many things we want to talk about. So I want to share a new thing. So we've been talking a lot about deepfakes last few weeks. In particular, someone commented to me, they're like, "Hey Brett, 4 of your last 5 Synthesia posts have been on deepfakes," and I didn't even realize it, right? Just because there's been so much activity. But we had another big announcement this week from Tencent, and other people are doing this as well. But they're basically creating deepfake personal digital twin avatars of people for $145. And they will give it to you in 24 hours. All you have to do is upload a few photos and it'll create the deepfake for you. And it will speak in Mandarin or English, depending on what you want it to do, which I thought was really interesting. I also showed people this week, let's see if I can pull this up on another thing, where I can actually create a digital twin of myself in basically 2 minutes. So I'll pull this up separately, but I'm interested in your perspective, Jeremiah. You haven't been on before. We haven't talked about deepfakes. What are your thoughts on how that's going to develop?
Can't stop it. I don't know what to tell you. Can't stop it. I think it's just going to become normal. I think we're going to normalize that people will have. I mean, we've already normalized filters from TikTok and Instagram, so I think this is just the next level. I don't know what to tell you. It's just going to become the standard way that people are used to seeing.
It is, and we see all these people. We see these people like clamping down on it and trying to stop it. It's like water. It just like goes everywhere.
How can you stop it? I mean, most Marvel movies are technically pretty much deep fakes. It's just, well, actually, even their faces are like, they have the dots on them and they're doing mocap. So this is just a common thing.
Yep, absolutely. What do you think, Eric?
I mean, I agree. I think going back to the 2000 Spider-Man movie, technically all of those scenes where Spider-Man is doing super heroic things are cartoons, in that they're computer images moving around in a way that no human could. And I think that there's that. It comes from that direction. Then it comes from the direction of what is a deep fake. If you put on enough filters on an Instagram post and play around with it enough, it's not a computer generated fake, but it's still a artificial image to some extent. So you keep going in that direction, and eventually you reach a point where the computer can handle all of it for you and produce your vision of a artificial version of yourself speaking or moving. And I think it's just something we'll all be comfortable with, or at least used to pretty soon.
Yeah, and here we go. So I've got this is something I created. I'm Brett Kinsella, Can you guys hear the audio?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's kind of it's not fully there yet.
AI, conversational AI, and synthetic media.
In a year from now, like you're gonna toss a bunch of news articles into GPT-4, and it's gonna generate it. You're gonna drop that script in here, and Eric's not gonna know he's talking to your deep fake. He's not gonna know he's talking to Deep Brett.
No, I'm not. I'm just like Gain every week. Is this going to be on autopilot? I mean, the problem is actually we can't prepare for it because everyone makes announcements on Thursday morning nowadays. But so that video that I just did, by the way, I did that with DID because I was like, okay, so Tencent will give me something in an hour. It'll cost me $145. If I go to Synthesia, I can get a branded spokes model, which is based on a real person like me, potentially. I can get that in 15 or 20 minutes, but I have to pay $1,000 a year to have that.
What?
But I can go to TID and for free in like 3 minutes, I uploaded a photo, and they allow you to upload audio track as well. So I actually just recorded audio. That took me less than a minute. It was 13 seconds of audio, and I popped that in. The downside of it was it kind of makes me like a side mouth talker, which is actually not the way I talk. I'm sort of more symmetrical. So it's a little bit off. And so there's maybe a little uncanny valley, but just like to get this thing like in a minute, I mean, it was really quick. And I just think that this is, like you said, Jeremiah, like you can't stop it. It's going to go everywhere because it's so effective. And we tied this back to what we saw at the beginning with the Wes Anderson style Star Wars trailer. These are the technologies we're just going to be using every day because it's so fun to use them. And we're already using them every day.
Yeah, I think I love the deep red. And Mikhail also mentioned the digital twin personal answering machine, and that is something that Samsung has developed only in Korean so far. But the idea being that if somebody calls you and you're on the phone or you don't answer, they'll hear your voice answer and like have a conversation with them using synthetic media to mimic your voice, basically having a conversation saying you're not there. So yeah, basically an interactive answering machine. That technology is already there, and then the visual elements, and the fact that, as you said, Brett, in 2 minutes it gets you 60%, 65% of the way there, and then the rest maybe takes a little more time, a little more data, but it's the fact that you can get so close with almost no effort means that there's going to be a lot of push to eventually have that amount of time and effort for 80% and more, and then. Yeah, like you said, there's the only difference between you and your artificial version will be if I guess one of you is in black and white.
And Katie McMahon just made this comment about speeds always valued highly. Now, Katie knows a lot about this. She was instrumental in building Shazam in the early days and like getting that instant response around music recognition. She then went to SoundHound, and SoundHound was always known as really fast speech recognition when she was working on the conversational assistant space. And, DID's got that. And everyone wants to try that out with DID, Creative Reality Studio. They give you like 20 credits free. You can actually do this yourself in 4 or 5 minutes. And if you do, upload them onto LinkedIn or Twitter and tag me. It'd be interesting to see what you put out there.
It's a little addictive too, because once you start playing with it, you can, like a lot of these synthetic media generators, it can be very tempting to just endlessly play with what you can come up with and see how it interprets what you write or what you say.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I had a briefing with Soar this week, and basically it looks at the conversation that you had, maybe a bit in that voice recording with your deepfake, and then it actually talks about what is the sentiment and looks at the body language as well as the voice. So all that. So basically, you might get that, Eric, you might get that voice message and it'll say somebody called you. They were really pissed off. About 45% of the time, you may want to ignore or respond quickly. Should I respond for you? Yes,
exactly.
Respond very nicely.
I mean, that's perfect. I mean, this is what we're heading towards. We're going to talk about that in just a minute with Pi, an assistant for you. That sentiment analysis, and I'm interested in learning more about SOAR. Otto was one of the first companies that did this. Unity bought them in 2019. And I actually just had Nico Peroni, who's one of the co-founders and CTO of Otto, talk about that. They did actually the sentiment analysis. You could upload like a podcast clip or audio, and it would tell you like all the different emotions. It would label it right in front of you. And they've been building that into Unity. Nico's now the head of generative or AI research at Unity. And he's on the podcast this week. So if anybody hasn't seen that, I think you'll be very interested. We talk about games, but we talk about a lot of other things like complex systems and what's going on with generative from both a technical and an application standpoint. You can see that on VoiceBot Podcast or on the VoiceBot YouTube channel, which you guys should all be subscribed to anyway. So
my bot's subscribed.
What?
Your bot's subscribed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but this wasn't the only deepfake story we had this week. Or related thing. Eric, you wrote about TikTok.
Yes, everybody's favorite dancing social media app is actually pretty advanced when it comes to generative AI experimentation, and their latest one is basically will take a picture of the user and create variations of that user for their avatar photo as a more creative way of expressing who you are, and is setting it up, at least in the testing right now, as a thing you could do literally every day. Have a new avatar photo of yourself looking like a different style. I think it very much is on brand for TikTok. They had previously put out an avatar creator that was one of the more cartoony memoji types. And yeah, as Mikhail says, it's basically Lensa with some it gives you more options, but more limitations on what the subject will be, because they do want to make it so that it's used as your profile photo, basically. But as we were talking about, it's easy. It's like, why not have this as a feature on a social media app the way that you would have any other creative personalization element, which is what people go to social media for. So I would not be at all surprised to see similar things popping up on other social media platforms, especially those that are mobile focused or mobile only,
Right.
because that's where this kind of activity takes place.
Yeah, I've been looking at a lot of these tools. I mean, one trend, as you guys both know, it's multimodal. And so that'll just be a common feature in all the creator economy, social networks, and platforms. Right. And I was using one this weekend called Augie. I don't know if you saw my video on that.
No, I didn't.
Put in, oh, yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah. Augie's great.
Is it okay if I talk about that?
Yeah, go for it.
So Augie is a tool. My buddy Jeremy Tillman, who I used to know back in Web 2 days, actually is the CEO. And essentially, I put in a text prompt and it's pulling in GPT-4, so it's got a plugin, and then it generates a script. And here's the video. And then it auto-populates on the script images. It pulls from stock photos. It's not generating them. And you can put in some keywords. Usually the images that are selected are not really in context. And then you could also refine it and choose other things. And you can choose a music background. Well, obviously, over time, it'll do that and change the levels. So you can see, like, with one sentence, you can create a 60-second video and just auto-populate Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Like one sentence, that's what's going to happen. So this is what I wrote. Write a short story in first person about a girl moved to the big city, launches a business, overcomes challenges, and finally succeeds. 300 words. If you could just turn on the sound a little bit, I don't know if that's possible, so people can hear.
Let's see. Yeah.
It does an AI-generated voice, too.
I knew I had a passion for fashion,
Yeah, let's just do it.
so I decided to start my own clothing line. Knew that I was meant for something bigger. The small town I grew up in felt stifling, and I longed for adventure and excitement. So as soon as I graduated high school, I packed my bags and moved to the big city. It was a daunting experience, to say the least. I had no connections, no experience, and no idea what I was doing.
All right, so that's
But I was determined to make dreams come true.
That's reminds me of the of what Adobe has been
Firefly.
Yeah, what they're talking about with their video stuff in terms of pulling from B-roll or stock images to make boring parts of a video that has good audio, but to make them more visually interesting.
Yep, that's part of it. I mean, these are still kind of crude. I had to put like 20 minutes into selecting the right images and photos, but you can see where this is going.
Katie has a thing. Oh, go figure. Female equals a fashion business. That's what.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey,
I mean, that
this
does
is a tool for you.
I mean, to be fair, it makes sense if it's pulling from public databases. I think there were maybe 100 sitcoms in the 90s that were built around exactly that. So
yeah, no, I think it's to me, it's fascinating what's been happening in this space. And I love that, by the way, because we've seen the Google demonstration of Funaki. We've seen Imagine for text to video, really short, Funaki longer, but I haven't seen anything which integrates all these things together. I mean, Runway is doing some interesting things right now, which we really need to spend like half of a session on Runway, probably next week or soon after that. But I love that you were able to do that.
And it points to what you were saying before about the collaborative element. You know, it's that it comes up with this, and then if you wanted to spend a lot of time on it, you would be able to tweak it or adjust it to fit different styles or whatever you wanted. It would adjust in turn. I think that's really an exciting idea.
And by the way, I mean, it's interesting that your prompt just said starts a business, and then but GPT-4 said fashion, turned it into a fashion business. But it big city, New York, I think it makes sense. But a really good point by Katie on that.
Yeah, so I'm trying out as many tools as I can, and then I tweet about it, and then the startups see it, and they give me VIP access. So I'm going to try one this week, and I'll get back to you guys. I just upload a prompt, and it creates an infographic like you would see in marketing.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, these are all going to go in a circle, right? So, and then you could say, turn that infographic into a video, and then it's going to create a video. Make sure that video has a script. It goes back to a script, and goes make that script turn into a prompt, and then it just does that infinitely without my doing.
I did like that it took a narrator perspective, and it did very much feel like if it were a longer story, it was going to build to the narration ends and it turns into a dialogue of her, like at her business or something. Like it felt very
it did do that.
Natural storytelling kind of thing. I don't know. It was just interesting that it's like you start with narration and then do a dialogue.
I posted it on LinkedIn, and usually what happens is people at the same time go through the different phases of grief. At this, I see the same comments, and so people are like, no, this is you did all that, or no, I don't believe it, or they want to say, you know what, yeah, we can figure out how to use this, and see people say that was really horrible, and then people say, oh, I'm going to use this tool, I'm going to use it. So I see all those comments in LinkedIn, including from graphic designers, video people, all at the same time. And it's just wild to see all 5 stages of grief at once.
Well, this is the world we live in. Everything's faster, right? Everything's so much faster than it used to be.
Well, if you wanted to make them if you wanted them to have more fear, you could just say that your collaborator was one of the Boston Dynamics robots with ChatGPT inside it.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
That's so many things about it. Yeah,
that video is amazing. Okay, so what we need to do though, because we're moving right along here, we need to get into the assistant chat space again and go into that a little bit more detail. So the first one I have here is we'll talk about Pi. So this is Inflection AI. Reid Hoffman is, I think, co-founder or one of the lead investors, maybe both. Eric, what do we got going on here? Because you tested it out and it was like okay, but there was some definite holes there.
It's interesting. It's almost a throwback to how we were talking about this kind of technology before OpenAI, honestly, before ChatGPT, when the idea was less about how useful are you and how productive are you, and more about how human are you, how good are you at mimicking a human or being someone that, or imitating someone that people would want to talk to. And so when that was how Inflection AI talked about it.
That's an interesting point. It's like an NLU based model in terms of the way the conversation doesn't flow as seamlessly, right?
No, yeah, exactly. And because it reacts in a way that is it's very obviously deliberately less about being your assistant and more about being your friend, your therapist, maybe. They keep talking about it having sympathy and being empathetic and responding in a way that it emphasizes emotional intelligence and rather than having deep understanding of human knowledge overall.
They didn't say which LLM they're using. Did they say that
they developed their own? They have their own.
That's what I thought. Okay, so it's not like they're not using a third party.
So these are DeepMind.
Actually, are you talking about Pi?
Yes.
No, I believe I saw some tweets that it was built on GPT 3.5. They asked it. You can ask it what model you want.
Oh, interesting. Because when I asked it, it said it was not using any that.
Yeah, it has inconsistent answers. That's for sure.
Okay. I was wrong, by the way. Reid is a co-founder, and I'm sure he's an investor as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was because he's not. He was part of when they started it. He was a co-founder and investor, but it was the DeepMind people who were the CEO and chief scientist. And I think, but yeah, as I said, it seems it wants to know how you feel and talk about that kind of thing, and it really wants to play. It's really keen on playing games, very very like games that involve a lot of talking to each other, kind of games.
It reminds me what robot.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it also is
constantly what robot.
Yeah, for like your own therapist type of idea. Yeah, I think that is kind of it. The other analogy I would bring to it is ADOT, which is an SK Telecom bot. It's only available in South Korea today. But if people listen to the VoiceBot podcast, I think that's publishing today. I interviewed the product manager for ADOT at Mobile World Congress, and I have an interview with him talking about it. And it really is this this friend, not a virtual assistant, but a virtual friend that has assistant-like capabilities. That's also built on an LLM, and they've got over 1 million users in their beta period. It's been out for about a year now. It's really, really fascinating. And I just had Robert Scoble. I just did an interview. He'll be up on the podcast in a couple of weeks, and we were talking about it. And like one of the things we were chatting about is his sense is that in this space, it's going to be the personal companion, which is going to really take off. Is as much as we see all these like business applications and utilities from ChatGPT and the competitors, he just expects that the personal friend, the digital friend, is going to be the thing that takes off.
And you got to bet on Reid, right?
Like, yes. I definitely people don't know Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, first product manager at PayPal. Yeah, it's in a number of other things.
and he is a major investor in OpenAI and on the board of Microsoft.
Yes.
So like, whatever Reed touches.
Yeah, so I think the implementation of Pi leaves a lot to be desired, but
I like the voice. I like the voice is what they did. I thought that was like somewhat soothing in the UI. I felt like it was a layer on top of, a friendly human layer on top of like the very rigid terminal look, like
yes.
of GPT. So I thought they did a good first thing. Yeah, the content needs to improve, but there was some other tools out there where you would talk to it for a long time and it would learn from you, but some of those went awry. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I love this comment from Costas. In a year from now, we'll look back at your podcast and say, okay, this is normal nowadays. That's right.
Yeah.
If you want to see what's going to be normal next year, just like go to the VoiceBot podcast. I've had some amazing guests recently.
Yeah, I always love looking back at outdated analogies people use for new technology that then seem very weird when everyone gets used to that technology and doesn't need an analogy for it anymore.
Yeah, Katie, longtime listener of the podcast. Thanks for the endorsement there, Katie. She said, since she here mentioned several times, it's about capturing as much data about the user as possible.
Yeah.
When you're a Korean company with a product in South Korea and you're talking in English in Spain to someone who runs a podcast, mostly with folks who are not Korean, although we do have a lot of South Korean listeners, you say all sorts of things that just won't fly if you're in the US or Europe. And they actually plan to bring ADOT to the US, I think later this year. And so that'll be really interesting how they talk about that in terms of the data they capture. But there's a lot of utility associated with that because it wants to be your friend. It wants to be your assistant. And the more it knows about you, the more it can personalize, do things on your behalf, really align with what you're looking for in a personal companion.
Yeah, it's that proactive aspect. I think also I see it especially from South Korean startups that talk about generative AI. They want to be able to have the AI know you well enough to start the conversation with you and tell you about stuff before you're even aware of it.
Okay, so let's go to business stuff, which I think is also see there also very interesting. A little bit of a delay there. Sorry about the lag. This just came out. Eric, as always, on top of these things when they break.
Trying.
So I don't know if a lot of people have used Bing Chat. By the way, if you haven't been in before, you really need to check it out. It's excellent. I use it a lot. I basically, since January, my search behavior has changed significantly. I probably do something like half my time I'm using Perplexity, maybe a quarter using Bing Chat, and a quarter using Google. Well, Google is really when I know what I want to get. Although I will say I've been using Bing Chat a lot more in relation. So maybe I'm a third, and a quarter, and then I don't know, maybe other stuff.
Are you using it within Microsoft Edge or as a browser page? Okay.
No, I'm using it or on mobile, but mostly in Edge. And by the way, I never would have downloaded Edge. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, that's a turn off to me.
But it's excellent.
Okay.
It's less power hungry than Chrome. I'm using it for actually a lot of things now because I'm in there with Bing Chat doing stuff, and so I'll just open a tab there. I really thought it was a mistake on their part to do that, and it may turn out still to be a mistake because you're creating friction when you shouldn't. But it got me to look at Edge, and they do want people to try out that browser, and it's actually pretty good. I feel like it doesn't have all the support of Chrome plugins and all these things, but it's really good.
It's the new IE.
It's yeah.
I think they're
more performant though.
Yeah, I think they think of it as the new Chrome in the sense of like people who use Google for everything were just using Chrome, and now they're trying to lure people to do the same with Edge. But let's get to like the lead here. We have. It's not just Bing Chat ends the wait list, which is fun. I took over and started talking about that too much. Visual search and third-party plugins. What's going on? Yeah, it's interesting because what Microsoft essentially did is preview the roadmap for Bing over the next probably year or several years, where they want to grow the Bing chat search beyond text into visuals, not just in terms of retrieving appropriate images, but using information to create charts if you're asking for data, and eventually even having the ability where the user uploads an image and the AI understands what the image is enough to use it as part of the search query. And that sort of multimodal approach, I think, is very will be in demand or is in demand. The idea where you can just take a photo of something, put it in your search engine, it will tell you everything you need to know about it without having to do more than that, or where you want to know something about even something academic like a historical figure, and not only does it pull up it's relevant information, but an image of them. And
well, it might be moving us also towards more AR type of applications coming to Bing.
Exactly.
I would expect. What about the plugin plans?
Yes. So this is Microsoft and OpenAI very obviously connected in a lot of ways, and it seems like Bing is going to do what OpenAI has begun doing and create essentially a developer platform where third-party companies can create plugins for the Bing AI and have conversational restaurants.
Will it be different though, or will it be the same thing that OpenAI is using?
As I sort of understand it, it will be its own plugins, but it will also be performing the same broad kinds of tasks. Like they talk about open table booking a reservation, or looking up scientific answers from Wolfram Alpha. It's the same kinds of
which are the precise plugins that are available today, the alpha version of ChatGPT, which we'll actually show in just a minute. That'll be the last thing we'll close on. But Jeremiah, any thoughts on Bing? I mean, you're talking.
I could talk about I spent time with 365 team about 2 weeks ago to hear how they're going to integrate Copilot, which is built off GPT-4.
Yes.
It's going to be this is how this goes mainstream. Yeah, of course, they have hundreds of millions of users already, but it's going to be integrated into Word, Outlook, Teams, 365, every single product. If you attend a Microsoft Teams video, it'll summarize the video and say, what was the sentiment, and here's the action items. It'll send it an email to everybody who is on there, and then it'll create a Word doc. If you have a Word doc, you can instantly create a PowerPoint slide generated. All the apps will work together, powered by all this stuff. So like that is game changing for the mainstream business worker, which will take the world over. And this is what Google's really worried about.
They should be. Well, the same week that Copilot 365 was announced, they said, hey, we have these nice generative features that we're adding in a beta to trusted testers for Google Docs, right? Just for Google Docs. They're saying, hey, you can do these new things with generative in Google Docs. And then all of a sudden, Microsoft comes out with a system, not a feature, but a system, and tied to the Microsoft Graph, personalized to the user and things like that. Now, I do believe that Microsoft, there's a long way between what Microsoft has announced and actually implementing it effectively, because there's so many gotchas in there. But they actually are showing what the future is going to be. And I can see like when that stuff all works together, it's going to be amazing. And it'll probably bring me back from Google Docs, because I used Google Suite.
Oh, but they'll have their own thing
more and move back.
Is it worth moving all your data over in all your systems just to wait for like a 12-month lag from Google?
Well, well, I don't know. I mean, I think, Google's going through some issues. I mean, we didn't even talk about Jeff Hinton left this week. Now, was Jeff really involved in this part of it? No, because this is more commercialization as opposed to base research. But there's also rumors about the fact that they're just thinking that Bard's not good enough and it's going to take them too long, and they might need to switch probably to Palm. Maybe one of the other models. They have actually a new model, which people have been playing with. So I actually, while I thought we were going to see a lot on this at Google I/O, if you look at Google I/O is their annual developer conference, and it's next week. And actually, just a note for everybody: Alan Furstenberg, who's a Google development expert, is going to join us and talk about all the announcements there. But if you look at the sessions, there's actually very little on Bard, on Palm, on using these type of solutions. There's just a couple. So I have a feeling that they're just not going to be as aggressive as I expected them in Q2. It might take a few more months.
And this week is the 365 conference for Microsoft in Vegas. And I looked at the agenda last week, and there's quite a few mentions of AI spread throughout. But it's not the only thing they're talking about.
Exactly.
Well, it's also, I mean, I'm not saying this is the main reason they did it, but it's interesting that Microsoft is previewing these things. They're not saying these are available or are about to be available. And I'm wondering, they pulled off a very competent demo of some of the things that they were talking about. and it's a week until Google goes out there, and I'm wondering if they think they can do it again in terms of having Google rush out a demo that then embarrasses them by having a mistake a week after they do.
Or
something.
it doesn't match up to the other solutions. Hey, Jeremiah, I know you've got to stop at the top of the hour. Can you go just 2 minutes over? I want to show you something else and get your reaction.
Very quickly.
All right. Well, we'll just start it, and you can drop off after you make your comment, and then Eric and I will wrap it up. So I got access to the alpha of ChatGPT for plugins.
I heard.
And started playing this, and I said, okay, well, what tools do I need to build a fence for my yard? And I have enabled a few plugins. The plugins is a separate model, by the way, with GPT-4. And what you can see here is when you put that in, it's identifying that Lowe's is the appropriate plugin, for this query, and then starts like writing an answer. But this is different than GPT-4. It's not actually giving me a list of things that I should do. It's starting to show me building supplies, in this case, fences that could help me solve this problem. It's also, when you go through it, it's showing basically the return information that's going to come back with a URL, and then it's actually updating that in real time, turning into a link with the URL. So it's just like basically a header. And as we go through this a little bit more, and by the way, this is on YouTube and VoiceBot's YouTube channel. If you guys all want to look at it, I'll have a Synthedia post with much more detail on this and a couple other examples later today. But you can see what's going on, which is really fascinating. So up above, I'd sort of clicked open of what the plugin is doing, and it actually shows some of the messages back and forth between ChatGPT and the plugin, the Lowe's plugin. It even shows what it's doing from a priming standpoint for the prompt and asking the parameters that it wants Lowe's to come back with. And then at the bottom, you can see that it asked me if I wanted to see images. So how many people have used multimodal in ChatGPT so far? Well, here it is.
Nice.
Plugins is the first place it's showing up.
Wow.
And I asked it to show images, and then it just started generating those.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then of course you should be able to prompt DALL-E to replicate, or create what your fence would look like based upon some other data. I saw the TED Talk where they did this, and it generated the shopping list into Instacart for dinner.
Yes.
Can it also populate the Lowe's shopping cart for you?
It did not, but actually, I can click on any of those, and it actually takes me to the shopping cart because I didn't ask it to buy.
Try it. Try. Say, put this in a shopping cart.
I can't right now because I'm showing the video right now for the show. But I will do this. Actually, if people want to do this, let me know. I'd be happy to do a quick Zoom with people who are in here or in the Synthedia community and just like walk through some different examples so people can see and we can try it in real time. I'd be happy to do that.
This is amazing. By the way, Amazon should be like kind of freaking out a bit here.
I mean, yeah, they're a little they're moving much more cautiously in some ways, but they clearly want this, but they're definitely not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see what happened is I clicked through, it took me to the page so I could buy it. They didn't have it in stock, so they tried to sell me on something else. Mikkel says, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Well, I tell you what, actually, what I will do, if anybody wants to stick around afterwards, I'll do that this afternoon. I know you've got to go, Jeremiah.
Thanks you for having me. I want to come back. Just want to quickly comment. Like when I'm with you guys, we're such high velocity and we're at the same levels versus some other calls and shows. I have to explain what's happening, but you guys we're at the same parity. So I really enjoyed hanging out with you. And thanks to everybody who is commenting. Ciao.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Bye.
Bye.
Eric, so I guess here's what I'll do, everybody. Go to Synthedia, and probably about an hour and a half, I'll have a new post out on the plugins. And maybe what we'll do is tomorrow morning, we'll just set up a Zoom. Anybody who wants to come, we'll let them jump in, and we'll just do some real time banging back and forth. I think that's probably the best thing. I'll figure it out. In any event, look in the comments below. I'll put them here if after this thing posts as a live video and send something out. But generally, Synthedia is going to be a place where you'll be able to get that info. Eric, any closing thoughts? We covered a lot of stuff. There were things that we planned to cover that we did not talk about.
Yeah, there are things we plan to cover, and then things that also just happened today, / yesterday that we hadn't even mentioned about planning to cover, like what's happening at the White House. But as we say every week, there's too much to cover, but we're trying to definitely hit all the highlights. And as we said, it's not like there's going to be a slowdown anytime soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate everybody being here. Sign up for the Synthetia newsletter. Hey, actually, just follow our YouTube channel if you're not already. It's youtube.com/the @voicebot AI. It's got all the Synthetia and VoiceBot stuff in there. I'm going to have more videos demonstrating what this is. And by the way, there's another video that I just put up, which goes through this whole process, talks about it in more detail, what you just saw, but also talks about one big issue that we have with the plugin model. And it's something that when I was talking to Doug Kitlaus and Adam Chire last week, or the co-founders of Siri, they both said this is going to be a problem. Watch, and it's already a problem. I saw it in the implementation right here. Can't OpenAI get over it? Potentially, but there's a significant UX thing that they haven't worked through yet. And so you'll be able to see that in the video as well. Plus, hopefully we'll all get together with this. But thanks a lot, everybody. This has been fun. Once again, Generative AI News Rundown, and may the 4th be with you.